Well, the battle is escalating between House Republicans and the director of the FBI. Speaker Kevin McCarthy even threatening to hold Director Wray in contempt. Former FBI Director James Comey, he's here to discuss.
We have jurisdiction over the FBI, which they seem to act like we do not. If he misses the deadline today, I am prepared to move contempt charges in Congress against him.
Well, he did miss that deadline, and you just heard from House Speaker Kevin McCarthy yesterday on that. Republicans in Congress are escalating their fight with FBI Director Christopher Wray as he refuses to hand over an internal document they say relates to an alleged scheme involving President Biden. Hours after Speaker McCarthy issued that threat on Fox, the House Oversight Chair, James Comey, said he will take direct steps now to hold Director Wray in contempt. This comes as Republicans continue their attacks on the FBI and the DOJ. Some House Republicans seeking to defund those agencies, alleging they've been weaponized against conservatives. And newly minted presidential hopeful Governor Ron DeSantis has pledged to fire the FBI director if he were to become president. What does this all mean for not only the FBI, but the country? Joining us now in studio is former FBI Director James Comey. He's the author of this new book that you will see between us. But I have to ask you first to respond to what we just heard from Kevin McCarthy and what the Oversight Chair James Comey and, I should note, Senator Chuck Grassley will do in terms of holding Director Wray in contempt. Should he be turning over this internal document?
I don't know enough about the particular document to say, but...
Well, it's the document, you know what it is. It's got many numbers in it, but it essentially outlines what a undisclosed witness or whistleblower told officials. And this would concern the Biden family, these accusations that have not been presented with evidence, but from the Oversight Committee, the accusations they've made.
Director Wray is a person of principle, and so I'm sure he's trying to ascertain what's the right thing to do, consistent with Department of Justice policy and tradition. And these are the kind of kerfuffles that blow up every so often in D.C. Now it's ensnared the FBI. It'll pass. It'll pass.
Governor Ron DeSantis, as you know, he's running for president. I was struck by what he said about the FBI in this interview he did with Fox News on the night of his announcement. He said, and this wasn't surprising, he said the DOJ and FBI have lost their way. He said they're very partisan. But what was striking to me is what he said about the independence of the FBI, or the lack thereof. Here it was.
Republican presidents have accepted the canard that the DOJ and FBI are, quote, independent. They are not independent agencies. They are part of the executive branch. They answer to the elected president of the United States. So as president, you have a responsibility to be involved in holding those agencies accountable.
Historically, previously, until the last few years, it has largely been those on the left who have been critical of the FBI. You were a Republican for most of your life until you say the party left you. Why do you think so many Republicans have turned on the FBI?
I think it's largely because Donald Trump and those around him have seen the FBI as a threat, and so they've taken a blowtorch to try and tear down that threat. It's really unfortunate. The notion that the FBI is some sort of leftist cabal out to get the Republicans is so crazy. It just shows you how crazy our times are.
Take a look. I thought that these numbers were really stunning. First of all, there's a Pew Research poll that shows just the divide in terms of Republicans and leaning Republicans. Only 38% now have a favorable view of the FBI. For Democrats, it's 65%. And then you talk about Trump. Look at this decline. Gallup showed that in 2014, 62% of Republicans had a favorable view of the agency. Now it's 29%. What can be done to correct that? And what if it doesn't change? What happens?
Well, it will change. The FBI will be fine in the long run. This fever around Donald Trump in the MAGA world will eventually break, but it's become somehow a nutty article of faith that the FBI is out to get Republicans. If you'd asked people 20 years ago whether that would someday be the accusation, they'd say that's nuts. It's nuts, but it will pass.
So John Durham released his report, a years-long report, just days ago, and he will testify before the House Judiciary Committee on June 21st. That's 3 weeks from today. This was about, under your purview, the Trump probe vis-a-vis Russia during the 2016 election. His analysis is, and it's different than the Inspector General's analysis, by the way, but his conclusion was the FBI never should have launched a full probe of Trump and Russia. And he said that the FBI used raw, unanalyzed, and uncorroborated intelligence, an essentially different standard than they used with Hillary Clinton. Do you have any regrets about how you and the team handled that investigation?
No. And there's nothing
None.
new in his report about the FBI. He thinks it ought to have been a prelim investigation and not a full, and the differences would be boring to your listeners and your viewers. He agrees that the FBI had to examine this and open an investigation.
But not to the extent it did. And he says that there were different standards used in terms of the probe on Trump and Russia and Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
You said on a different network in a recent interview that there are some things you wish you did differently. What are they?
Oh, plenty of different things. From small things to large things. In announcements I made, I don't like the way in which I put things in order. I wish I had entered the encryption debate in a different way. When you look back at a career, you can always find things. But I think the FBI had to open that Russia investigation. People forget, Republicans, we weren't investigating Donald Trump. We were trying to find out if anybody in his world was working with the Russians, had to do that investigation and did it in a professional way.
What we see now, looking at the Trump probes now, specifically the two federal ones led by the special counsel, Jack Smith, do you expect that the special counsel will recommend charges in either probe? You talked about the Mar-a-Lago documents case as potentially being the most damaging to Trump. Do you expect Jack Smith would recommend charges to the Attorney General?
I don't know. He's been doing it like a pro, which means I know very little about it, as do you. And so I don't know. It strikes me the Mar-a-Lago case is the one most likely to result in criminal charges, but we'll have to see.
Well, we know very little about it, but some good reporting has told us a bit about it, including the Washington Post last week, as you know, with their reporting that boxes of those classified documents were moved on June 2nd, the day before they knew that FBI officials were coming down to look at the documents. Does that point to obstruction?
Maybe.
Maybe.
I know from having been inside investigations that as good as the reporting is, it can't see what a professional investigation is doing fully, and so we'll just have to wait.
The Washington Post profile of you in this book was really, really interesting, and this is what they wrote at the end of one of their multiple reviews of your book. Quote, "It seems like everyone in America has been angry with him, you, at some point, for his decisions about what to reveal and when." And you've said getting fired is the best thing that ever happened to me. Why?
Oh, to me personally?
Yeah.
Because I get to dress in a different way. I get lots of sleep and exercise.
But
and
you had a
spend time with my
10-year term. You
grandchildren.
only got to serve 4 years.
Oh, yeah, I grieve not having the opportunity to stay with my full term at the FBI. I think I was answering a question about me personally.
Okay.
It's harder to be FBI director than to be a crime fiction novelist.
What do you make of what the Washington Post wrote, that every American has been angry with you at some point for different reasons?
Yeah, I frankly hope it's not fully true, but I've heard a lot of it, and it causes me pain.
It does.
Wasn't in that business to try and piss people off, but sometimes when you're making decisions, especially in a polarized environment, you can't help but get people upset at you, as Chris Wray, the current director, is discovering.
Certainly.
He'll be okay in the long run. Someday he'll be dressed in casual clothes and getting a lot of sleep.
I told you when I was coming to set, and now we're going to talk about the book, that I never thought I would speak with you in a T-shirt and sneakers. So a much more relaxed life now, and the life you see ahead for yourself as a novelist. This book, you've always loved to write. You contributed to your school's literary magazine. So this has sort of been in your blood for a long time. But the plot of this book, which I said is riveting, is a federal prosecutor here in New York, and it's a girl, maybe slightly a woman based on your own daughter, who is a federal prosecutor. But this is a mob case, and then it's tied with New York City politics and a New York governor. How much of this story is inspired by your work prosecuting the mob and what your daughter is doing?
It's a combination. A lot of it is places I've been, cases I did when I was a mob prosecutor. But when I was working on this, my oldest child, my daughter, was on her feet in the same courtroom I prosecuted mobsters in when she was 4 years old, prosecuting Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's partner in abusing young girls. And so it had to be a woman as the protagonist. And so I could write it, not thinking about me, but thinking about this person I love tremendously, like all my children. So that made it really fun.
A lot of women have been a part of this book, not only your daughter, but as I understand it, your wife is your biggest critic. And some of her criticism doesn't come face to face. It comes at night when you're asleep in a Google Doc.
Thank God. She's also my biggest fan. I hope she would say. Yeah, she is
constructive criticism.
Exactly. Loving and devastating at the same time. But she's my partner, and she tells me the truth when it's good and when it's not so good. And luckily, it's often in the form of a Google Doc comment or suggestion, so I can go through the stages of denial before I accept that she's right.
But she helps you come up with the plots, right?
Yeah, she's our idea person. She has great story vision. And my job is to write it and then get good feedback from people who love me about whether it's good or not.
Next one is already almost done.
Yeah, in draft, it's out for loving feedback with family members.
Loving feedback, always. Director Comey, appreciate you weighing in on the news, your career, and congratulations on your new book.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Good to have you. Erica.